tonight I have a whole bunch of miniatures that hopefully we'll get through. I've got a lot of things that I've been working on and putting off for a long time in various states of completion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 11 miniatures that I'd like to get through tonight. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to do my best. So here we go. This is water, in case you're interested. And I've got my paintbrushes that I normally use. My brush for blocking in all of the basic colors is a size 12 round. And the point is the main thing that we're paying attention to on this. The main thing that concerns me is the point, and this has a fantastic point, so it should do well. Then my next workhorse is, I don't know what size this is, a 6, and it's just a 6 round. And then, not my detail brush, but like my other smaller size brush is a 3. I've got a size 2 that's more like a 6 or 7. It's all frayed out and cut down that I'm using for my oil paints, most of my oil paints. And then I've got this. I have no idea what size this is, but it's an Army Painter Wargamer character, and I don't know, it's probably a 0. Maybe it's a little bigger, maybe it's a little smaller. It kind of looks like it's a 1. I don't know what it is. So anyways, I have an assortment of paintbrushes, and we're going to get through the miniatures as quickly as possible. And I want to show you some different techniques. Mostly I want to show you how I work oil paints into my normal miniatures that I'm working on, and I want you to pay attention to the washes and the contrast paints and how I use those. I don't know that I'll be able to finish everything tonight, but hopefully we'll be able to get through a lot of it, and I want you to see the speed that I'm able to paint most of these guys in, and the, I don't know, how awesome they look once I'm finished. That's not what I was trying to go for, but just the overall look of the miniatures. I think you can get a really decent result in a very short amount of time by using a couple of key methods, and I talk about them every week because I want you to try it. If you haven't tried it, you owe it to yourself 10 years from now to try it, because you will be able to accomplish in 1 year what would have taken you otherwise at least a decade to accomplish. And I know for me, I don't have the time to sit down and paint for hours every day and make everything look perfect. So I'm going for good enough or pretty good, and accomplishing that in a minimum amount of time with a minimum amount of effort. So we've done the zenithal priming, which this is a great example. This little guy. So laid him down, spray it black, flip it over, spray it black again all around, and then stand it up. And when I stand it up, then I spray it white from one angle. So we've got the shadows underneath, meaning I don't have to paint the shadows. If I give this a wash, or a, I don't remember what those King's Workshop colors are called, contrast paints, if I use a contrast paints on it, and I keep them thin, then the black is going to stay darker, and whatever's white is going to stay more that local color of whatever the piece is. And I'm going to have a pretty fantastic result in not very much time, which is what I like. And some pieces, like this is a statue that I'm using for some Frostgrave scenarios. So I've done the same zenithal highlight, or zenithal priming, where I primed it black and then stand it up and sprayed it white. This I used the ink instead of a paint to spray it. And this is basically done. For just being a statue, this is pretty sweet. However, I am going to use oil paints on this and make it a little bit more old looking, a little bit more weathered. This has just been primed white, but I'm going to use the oils on it. I need a marker for Operation Last Train. I've got this that's been sitting in my box, things to paint, for years, and I've painted the dirt. I've painted all the things that are going to be gold and silver gold, or sorry, I painted them silver, and I got her hair kind of a reddish brown. This guy is for Operation Last Train. He was, what is that game called? Um, the subtitle is The Battle for Alabaster Station, but I don't remember what it's called. This was Studio McVeigh's Kickstarter. It did really well, and everybody loved the miniatures, and then nobody played the game. The game is kind of interesting, but the miniatures are fantastic. So this guy is also going to be for Operation Last Train. I've got this dude. I have no idea where he came from, but I've had him for at least 5 years. Nothing has happened to him, so he's getting painted tonight. I think his belly's hanging out. Yep, belly button right there. Okay. And then this is Lieutenant Kara Sloan, also from that Studio McVeigh game. Man, I wish I could remember what that was called. Anyways, cool mini. And let's see if I can get it painted. Okay. First, I kind of want to do the oil paints. I'm excited about that. So I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It was $8, and I think I got it on sale for like $4 or something, maybe a little less than $3.50. But there's a bunch of colors in here, and if you're not going to go crazy with oil paints, this will probably last you your whole life. If you are going to go crazy with oil paints, then I'm going to show you the size difference. This is Burnt Umber from that Hobby Lobby cheapo intro pack. It's like a student set to get you figuring out how to use the oil paints. This is Burnt Sienna. This was $6. This was, I don't know, 50 cents, something like that, on sale, 50 cents. So, yeah, it's pretty cheap. You can get inexpensive oil paints all over the place, and the quality is not going to be as awesome as if you spent, $40 or $50 on a little tube like this, but you're going to get a lot of mileage out of the paints that you use. So I'm going to use these guys, and then I know I like the phthalo blue. We'll just contrast paint that part. Okay, so these are the three main colors that I'm using. Is plant green, ivory black. I don't know why they chose to call it ivory black, but it's ivory black and burnt umber. To me, ivory should be white. So I'm not using my airbrush. I'm going to use my oil paint brush for this. And here's what you do. This is some thinner. You can use like different types of alcohol-based things. Turpentine, don't use turpentine. This is pretty good. It doesn't smell terrible. This is mostly odorless. It still does the same things to your brain and your eyes. You just aren't aware of it as it's happening. So I've got the fans going in the back, the air filters going, and we're going to try to make it through this without me passing out. Also, I just finished painting this dude a couple of days ago. So I've collected and played Blood Angels for a long, long time, and then have strayed away from 40K for other smaller, less expensive games, mostly War Machine and Infinity and Frostgrave, and then Flames of War, and I spent way more on those other games than I would have if I just stayed with one 40K. But I never could settle on a Blood Angels color scheme. And I just found this guy on Instagram painting up some shiny Blood Angels, and so I kind of copied what he did, adjusted some stuff, and man, I wish you could see these in person. If you're ever at the store and I'm there, check these guys out, because they are way more detailed, I guess. Like, there's little tiny scratches all over the place on them that look pretty cool, and the camera has a hard time picking them out, but that guy's awesome, and I'm excited to paint more. I've got the Terminators from Space Hulk base coated and ready to go, and I'm working on a tank right now that I've printed and is waiting to be painted. So, anyways, back to the oil paints. I'm using these little guys to pull up some of the thinner, And then we will cap the thinner again because I don't like the fumes and I don't want it to flash off. Then, let's see, what are we going to paint first? Let's do the statue first. So the statue, we need a little bit of black. So I'm just squeezing out a little thing, not much at all. That's like the size of a button on a dress shirt. I know I'm going to need more black. And then this is the brown. Squeeze out a little thing of that. That's like the size of a piece of corn. And then we'll get the green. Whoa, that was a lot of green. That's like the size of a pea. So if you're not crazy into oil paints, getting that inexpensive set is going to last you a long, long time. Phone's having problems focusing, as always. Okay, then you just take your little thing of thinner, and I'm going to squeeze out 1, 2 drops onto each of these. All right, 3. And start painting. So let's see. I want some of this. That is going to make me crazy. My palette is moving around in all kinds of different places. And I lied to you, this is not my thinner that I like. So I'm going to get some different stuff, because that thinner that I just had isn't going to cut it. It's an artist joke. So don't worry if you mess up with these. The oils are super forgiving. And oh, man, you can always come back to them later. I'm going to use those ones with the other thinner for some different things later on. I'll use them for some terrain. It's just not the kind of thinner that eats away at the paints enough for miniatures. It works great for terrain, but I'm going to use this stuff. It always says it's odorless, and it never is. Alright, that's better. Whoa. That stuff is actually not bad. Okay. Now, what am I painting? This. So I'm going to get my black. Hey, that's more what I wanted. And the brown. And then I'm just going to... Hello. Yeah, that camera lag. Sorry about that. Then I'm going to smear it all over the place. Not being concerned about anything here. Just gonna embrace the tendency of the oils. This is gonna get messy quick. I'm gonna embrace the tendency of the oils to mix, and I need to find me a base. Pop you off. I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to start painting this without gluing it down to something that I could hold on to. So I'm going to get my accelerant. I love Zip Kicker, but this stuff is way less toxic. It's probably not any less toxic, it just smells less toxic to me. Put some super glue on the bottom. Stick that on. The only problem with the accelerant is it makes the join a little bit brittle, which if you do some cross hatching or something, or you pin the miniatures, it's not an issue at all. But a lot of bigger pieces, it can be an issue. Okay, back to the paint. So I got a base now, so I'm not going to mess up my fingers. Just going to get more of this stuff and paint it on. Now I'm putting this on pretty heavy because the idea with the oil washes, which is what this is the oil, the paints are going to find their way into all the recesses and little tiny details, and they're going to look awesome because that's what they're designed to do. And as it starts to cure a little bit, not really a ton, but just a little bit, I'm going to go in with a Q-tip. You could use a brush or anything, it doesn't really matter, but I find using Q-tips is pretty easy. Economical. That was way heavy, but it's fine, doesn't matter. Just gonna slosh it all on. Then I'm going to leave this for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, move on to something else, and when I come back, I'll be able to start using the thinner applied to a Q-tip and then pull away the amount of oils that I want so that it looks awesome. I really need to buy more of these. This is always a great investment. These little Games Workshop paint holders, or whatever other company you like. There's a ton of different ones. As long as it does what you need it to do, it's probably going to be fantastic. Something else you can do if you've got like statues and stuff, which is why I got the green, is you can hit some green onto it, and it's going to look like moss or some kind of plants. You don't need a lot. A little oil paint of whatever color you're using goes a really long way. So I'm just going to let that percolate for a while. I'll move on to this one. So this is from the old Battle for Ultramarines Home Planet box set. And I'm going to paint not that coil. So I'm going to try to avoid that coil, and then I'm going to try to avoid that thing, the light. But everything else I'm going to paint. And if it gets onto them, it's not a big deal. Mostly because I'll just paint over it. I suppose I could try to pull the paint off, and too lazy, too hard, takes too long. I just want this to look kind of rusty and crusty. So I watched The Expanse. I just finished season 4. Great show, definitely not for families. But one of the characters in there is fond of singing a particular sea shanty. It is an adaptation of the Ballad of Captain Kidd, and I really enjoyed hearing that in a sci-fi setting. I thought it was really interesting the way that they brought 17th century pirates into space, and it's pretty awesome. So, of course, me not being able to let anything go, I had to learn the words and figure out all the history behind it. And then I started listening to more shanties and more 16th and 17th century English sailing songs. And now I got them in my head. And I never played, I wasn't a fan of the, oh gosh, what were those called? The Assassin's Creed titles. But the pirate one has a whole bunch of those songs in it, apparently. And now I've got YouTube playlists full of pirate and sailing songs, and listening to them at night while I'm painting has changed the way that I perceive a lot of these miniatures. Everything kind of has a pirate feel to it, at least in my brain. It's interesting the way that music affects what you're working on too. Oh crap, got a little bit too much oil paint right there, but it's fine. Just paint over it later. All right, that is super grimy looking. Then I'm going to get the brown and some more thinner. A lot of thinner is kind of necessary right here. So I'm going to paint the ground at the same time. But I want it to be more brown than the top part, which has a lot of blacks in it. The cool thing about using the oils on things like ground, anything that has a lot of texture, is if you've got enough or the right amount of thinner mixed in, that's just going to go into all of the little areas that you would normally have a hard time reaching with a brush. A brush and water, and painting bases or anything else that has a lot of texture can go really quickly. You can use alcohol and water and stuff and get pretty similar results, but because I've got the oil paints here, we're just going to stick with them. Okay, now what else would I use oils on? Maybe this guy's thing, because it's kind of gross. Yeah, oils do really well on anything that you would think would be good for Nuln Oil, or whatever that other color is called that I never remember. Agrax Earthshade. Could do his coat, but we'll just leave it like that. Anybody else? No, the bases on that I'm not going to use oils for. The sci-fi bases, I was thinking about it, but not going to do it. Yeah, that's probably it. Okay, next, I'm going to get this stuff. Defeat the child-proof lock, which is sometimes really difficult. I'm going to get my Q-tips, and I will show you this magic. I don't think it's been 15 minutes, but let's see how it goes. So you just dip it in gently. Guess I could show you. I'll show you in a second. So I got Q-tip, I got miniature, and all we're going to do is just, so remember this looked really white at the beginning. We're just going to touch it to this and pull up the oil on the surface, the oil paints on the surface. And I found that kind of a rolling motion can work really well. I don't want it to be that green. So this essentially is a brush, or it's how I'm using it right now. So I'm going to kind of blend this stuff in. I don't want it to be super grimy, but I do want it to show some age. And then I'm going to go over the rest, just touching lightly with the idea that I'm moving in the same direction, the same way that I would with a dry brush, same idea as a dry brush, so that I'm not destroying the effect of all the shadows moving in the same direction. This is also continuing to blend the oils more than what they had, been originally. And I'm getting another cool effect where the base of this is fairly dark and the face is a lot brighter. So bonus for focusing on that. So I'm just touching this to the thinner and getting some out. That was a little bit too much. And I want that shield to stay a little lighter, so we'll just take off some more. Take off some more. Just kind of, instead of applying color to the miniature, I'm removing color from the miniature in spots where I think it will look the best. And that's kind of what you get. So now this has more color in it than when it was just primed with black and white. And there's a lot more color variation in it. That Q-tip is getting huge. Time for another Q-tip. Show you. So just dunking it, kind of squeezing out the excess. And then, I guess that was really black to start with. This works on all kinds of miniatures. Tanks, houses, buildings, whatever you're working on. If you want it to look dirty, oil paints are a great option. And I've experimented with using some oil paints to paint things that I am not trying to make super dirty. And it's a little tricky, mostly because that oil runs. The oil paints run. But that is their nature, and as long as it's what you want, then you can paint just about anything with them, as long as you thin them down to the correct consistency. Okay, so she's done. That is my statue. I like it. It's not super clean looking like it was before. Looks like it's part of the world. And it's got some green tones in it, which is always nice if I can add a little bit of variety. Now this guy, use the other side of the Q-tip, and I'm going to try to avoid the base as much as I can, because I just want this to look like it's been kind of sitting out here for a while, but I don't want it super grimy because I still have to paint some lighting effects, and I'm going to do some metallics, and yeah, I don't want this to look super grimy. So that's pretty good. Get one more Q-tip. Yeah, that's looking pretty weathered, but not so much that I wouldn't like want to wear gloves. I feel like I had to wear gloves before I went and picked it up. Oh man. If you start to get like take a little bit too much off, you can always just grab some oil paints with your Q-tip and kind of reapply as needed. So there's not really a wrong or a right way to do this. It's just you kind of messing around with the paint until it looks like what you want it to look like. Yeah, so that looks like it's been out in the rain. Maybe part of a crashed ship, crashed speeder, some kind of locator beacon or something. And that will work perfect for Operation Last Train, which, by the way, is a fantastic game. If you haven't played it, you should. Just Google Operation Last Train, download the rules. Super simple. Great game for playing with kids. That's going to be yellow in the middle, and yeah, the rest I'm okay with. Okay. So that was my 3 Q-tips, and I got 1 miniature done. And that statue. I gotta wait for a little bit for this to dry, or at least the solvents to flash off. Then I'll go in and paint the light and that coil in the middle. That can wait. Okay. You are done. Statue. So let's keep painting this goblin guy. I have a ton of goblins. At one time I had in Warhammer, I don't know, 6th or 7th edition or something, I had about 6,000 points of orcs and goblins, and I got rid of them. I was not using them, and sorry, my camera's on the fritz. Anyways, I wasn't using the orcs and goblins, and just decided that it was a better option for me to sell them. And so over the years, because I had so many of them, I keep finding like 1s and 2s of them in different boxes. And come on, camera, come back to me. Well, apparently you don't get to see my palette for the rest of the evening. I don't know why. Doesn't matter. It's not important. Can't remember what I was working on. Oh, the goblin guy. Yeah, so keep finding these guys in 1s and 2s, and I'll get them painted eventually. So I'm going to use my contrast paints for this, mostly. Assuming I can find the paints. Got it. So this is orc flesh, and it is way saturated. So I'm going to have to paint over it just a little bit. after I'm done. For this, the orc doesn't have a ton of spaces, so I'm going to use my number 6 brush. I used to read the Rackham, Cry Havoc was the name of the magazine, but Rackham, many years ago, produced a miniatures magazine. It's called Cry Havoc. You can find them online still. If you ever get the chance to buy those on eBay or something, snatch those up, even at like 20-30 bucks a piece. I think it's well worth it. But I remember in one of the issues, they were talking about how they had achieved the clean look on their miniatures and the smooth blends. And the artists they were interviewing, it's one of their studio artists, he said that the more you clean your brush, the better your painting will look. And he was referring to the idea that continually refining your point and keeping your brush clean and behaving as it should is the main thing that will give you accuracy and consistency in painting miniatures. So you'll see me quite often rinse my brush, and that's all that the guy was talking about. Not to like break out the soap and spend a half hour cleaning your brush, but just to keep it nice, to preserve the point, to make sure the ferrule isn't getting clogged with paint, and also to keep an amount of water in the brush that'll kind of naturally thin the paints. There's a lot of truth into that the more you clean your brush, the better your painting will be. So it's not just using a good tool. Part of it is keeping your tools nice, preserving that point so that you have the ability to get consistent accuracy, and keeping your brush wet so that the paints stay diluted to a good consistency, or a consistent consistency. Okay, that's fine. We're done with the orc flesh. I'm going to use some Agros Dunes. One little spot of that, mixed with some Black Templar. The Black Templar is going to be for his robe, but the Agros Dunes is going to be for this the moon thing that's up here. And I'm going to use the Agros Dunes mixed with black to paint the like the rope belt and maybe that ropey thing that's tying this on. Yeah, that's nice. Then give me a spot of black with the Agros Dunes. That was way too dark, so I'll get some more of that yellow color. That's nicer. Just didn't want it to be so heavy on the top of that. Pick up a little more yellow. We'll do yellow. It's Agros Dunes. When I'm using contrast paints, I find it beneficial to paint the small details first. Not necessarily small details, but like this rope thing. If I was going to paint I am going to paint the robe black, but as I paint it black, if I make any mistakes or slosh onto the rope, because the rope is a darker color, I would obscure it. I wouldn't be able to paint over it with this lighter color of the Agros Dunes. So as much as possible, pay attention to what you're doing and go from Maybe not all the time, but I think it's beneficial at least to consider going from light to dark on your miniatures. That skull might look cool with some Agarose dunes mixed with black. Yep, that looks awesome. A long time ago, I started painting and adding black into my skull and bones mix, and I think it adds a lot of life to the bones. Yeah, because they're not just white and they're not like a bone color with some kind of a shade. There's more something more ominous about a kind of an oily black brown mixture to bones. One more spot of Agarose so that I can get this moon thing painted. Those oils are not, they're by no means dry, but they're dry enough that I can paint over it without it messing stuff up. Yeah, black. Let's mix a little bit of Agarose with that so that it's not so heavy. Contrast paints are great, especially in the correct application. Contrast paints are awesome. And if you use them not how Games Workshop tells you to, but if you use them like paint, instead of just washing the whole thing, washing the surface of everything you're working on, then like be accurate with your contrast paints. Don't just slap it on like some kind of monkey. Then you get a lot of mileage out of them. And people will ask you, how'd you do that? How'd you paint so many things so fast? Contrast paints and not being an idiot with them. Plus, let's be honest, most of your guys, you're not going to look at them a ton. Other people aren't going to look at them a ton. You'll see them when they're on the table. You'll see them when you take them off because they got blasted by something. But you're not going to spend a lot of time looking at them. So the miniatures that you will spend a lot of time looking at, maybe don't use contrast paints all the time if you don't like the look of them, of the contrast paint. But for rank and file dudes, especially in the fantasy lines or anything that's got a more organic look to it, like these goblins, skeletons, Skaven, whatever you've got that's kind of the bad guys. Heck, even Stormcast, used in the right way, contrast paints work really well on Eternals, on the Stormcast guys. Then nobody's gonna fault your painting for using the contrast paints because they look fantastic, as evidenced by this one. That is all contrast paints. I need to put a matte varnish on her. But otherwise, that's pretty awesome. All of my guys, I'm using this purple. I should probably get a different thing, like an ink. Yeah, that actually would be nice to have an ink. So I'm painting their cowl using the Citadel Druchii Violet shade. Originally I was doing it with contrast paint, but it was coming out really dark and I didn't really like how it looked. So I switched over to using the shade, and I've got to put at least 2 applications of it on. At least 2, usually 3, to get the saturation that I want, the vibrancy of color. But it looks a lot better. So what do we need? We need his shoes, we need this stick thing, and then we need the mushrooms. And his other stick thing. Whenever you're using Games Workshop paints in this configuration, the bottle configuration, the worst configuration, make sure that you close them. Most people will, like all humans do, push there and think that it's closed. And then right here, that will start to dry out and get all crusty, or you'll shake it and paint will go flying everywhere, or you'll drop it and the lid comes off. Ask me how I know all of these things. So you got to push down to make sure that that lid is closed all the way. What do we got? Wildwood is going to be my next color. So again, another contrast paint, Wildwood. Put out a couple of spots of this. Normally I like to use black for all of my weapon handles and hafts and stuff, but if I'm working on a piece that has a lot of black already, like the goblin with this cowl cloak thing, robes, then I'll use a different color that's kind of dark. In this case, Wildwood. Oops. If you get some paint on it, just brush it off. I got some paint on his fingers, and touching it and brushing it off works great to clean it up. So anyways, I'm going to use the Wildwood for his staff handle, and for the shoes, and for the handle on the other side. This thing. I think the key with using contrast paints, a lot of people have expressed to me difficulty and frustration in using them, that they don't behave how they expect them to. I think as long as you keep your brush moving, or the paint moving, the contrast paints will most of the time do what you want them to do. But when I see people have slops, or like stuff looks weird with the contrast paints, it's generally because they haven't been moving the paint the entire time. Like they're going too slow. Or they just didn't put enough contrast paint on it to begin with. So it kind of dries weird and can give less than satisfactory results. But personally, as I already told you, I love the contrast paints. For most things, they're pretty awesome. If I'm doing a little bit of skin, definitely the way to go. If I'm doing a lot, like if it's just a face inside some armor or something, contrast paints all the way. If I've got a lot more skin, like on dwarves or something, then I won't use them as much. Maybe to give me an idea of where to put the different colors, but this guy is basically done. I'll put the Wildwood away. Let's see, we need mushrooms. I don't know what color mushrooms are on the bottom. Let's call it Skeleton Horde. So that Probably could have used Agros for it also, but this is a little paler. Whoops, that was not the color. That was Wildwood. I got the mushrooms, and let's go with a super bright. Nah, we're not going to do super bright. We'll do Flesh Terrors red, contrast paint. Thinking about Blood Angels red, but that is really, really red. The Flesh Terrors should work a little bit better in my brain for how I want these to turn out. Yep, that was the right choice. Missed a little spot in the front on these guys. But that's the front. Okay, this dude's done. Except for the base. So what paints do I have? I have some Agros Dunes, I have some of this, I have some of the Wildwood. Let's mix it all together with a drop of water and get the base painted. A little more water. So I'm just taking all of the different browns and kind of yellowy colors that I had left over on my palette, and I'm kind of mixing them together, and that's getting put onto here. Accidentally picked up some red. Guess we'll fix that. A little spot of Agros, a little spot of Wildwood, some water, mix the two, and we'll paint the base. Wife and kids were over at my wife's parents' house playing on the swing set. They just got home, so if you hear screaming, it's the kids fighting bedtime. Awesome. Let's let that dry. We'll do one more thing of purple. With these washes, not so much the contrast paints, but with the washes, you got to be careful that the whole thing is dried before you start putting on a second application of the wash. Otherwise, it is very easy to pull up what you've already done, and it doesn't take long to dry, a couple minutes. But just give yourself a couple of minutes to make sure that it is dry. Second coat, that's perfect. That should be fairly matte by the time we're done. And then I'll paint some teeth using, I don't know, whatever this color is. Vallejo Game Air Dead Flesh. That was way too much. I'm also going to take a little bit of this for the tops of those mushrooms. Once that contrast is dry, I'm going to switch from, so all of that was with my number 6 brush. We'll switch to the point. Tip is starting to get worn out on that number 6, so I don't know what this is. It's just the Army Painter's like character brush. They have a bunch that are a lot smaller than this, but this will work for what we're doing. Get the paint. And let's go. That was a lot. That was a lot. It's gonna look like ladybugs. Then goblins, I'm imagining, don't have the cleanest teeth or the best dental hygiene, so I'm not going to use white. I'm going to use that dead flesh color. He's got some teeth, so we're just going to paint the teeth. And I'm not being too careful because he's a goblin. I gotta paint like 60 of these guys. So it's not that big a deal. Maybe we'll put a little spot of, give him a little beady eye on the inside. Do that on both sides. Good enough. Oh, fine. Fingernails. You convinced me. Been painting, been working in the garden a lot the last couple of days. Oh, excuse me. That's where the sneeze comes from. Cutting down all the weeds, pulling up all kinds of stuff that I should have done in October, but put off. And my allergies are kicking in pretty hard. Can't really see that thumb. I'll go for that thumb too. And then, what do we got going on? I'm going to mix a little bit of this white in with the dead flesh. I'm going to try to highlight just a little bit, just not a ton. Just want to give the impression that there's more there than flatness. There's a little something there, something there. Yeah, definitely not going to spend a ton of time. Because for reals, he's just a goblin. And if you've got goblins, you got a crap ton of them to paint. So just get through it. Probably would have been better served to use a dry brush on this with some Vallejo bleached bone, but this will work just as well. With these smaller brushes especially, you'll find you need to clean them out much more frequently and religiously than larger brushes, just because they don't have the water holding capacity that larger brushes do, and the paint dries out on them, on the tips, way faster. So same reasons to preserve your tip and to maintain your accuracy and improve the quality of the paints that you're working with. Just rinse your brush out often. And this guy is actually getting a little hair on the tip. I don't think you'll be able to see it. Yeah, I don't think you can see it. But I'm going to remove that because it's making me crazy. There's like a little, one of the hairs is curling and causing headaches. Okay. Now the goblin is done. All I got to do is paint the base with a black edge, which I should do for all of these guys. I guess I'll wait until they're all finished before I paint the black edge on them. Give them some grass and they'll be done. We can come back to this. This is still maybe 3 or 4 hours away from being completely dry. But why do I keep taking that out? I'm going to use whatever this is, Achromatic Blue. I don't really know what this is going to look like. We'll experiment with it. So I'm going to go back to my number 6 brush. Yeah, number 6. And I want this stuff on the inside, this coil, to be that achromatic blue color. Alright, this was not strong enough. Need a brighter color. Or I could do several applications of this and get what I'm going for. Kind of want this to look like those power generator things from Star Wars, but instead of it being yellow, I want it to be blue. Like the little power generators that they take around with them in. It's the one that Luke sets up on Dagobah. They have them to give power to the Golem, or not the Golem, those laser batteries on Hoth. They use them all the time in Rebels too, and the Clone Wars. And then we use this guy for the light. Come on, stay. Oh, it's going, it's going. It's going to close. It closed. Pretty good. Pretty good. Not perfect, definitely not perfect, but that's about all the time I'm going to spend on this. So in a couple minutes, if I can remember when it dries, I'll do one more coat of achromatic blue on that bottom, and then probably do a white highlight in the center of it, and then paint the base edge. Oh, Games Workshop, come on. Design your paints better. This one's not closing. You might witness a disaster right here. Time to transfer you to a dropper bottle. So this is why, as much as possible, I use the dropper bottles. Because I just scraped this out of the inside of that and in yellow. Now it closes again. But I keep having to do that every couple of days, and it's using up a ton of paint. It's mostly dry, not quite. It's enough that we can put on the second coat without me being afraid that I'm going to pull up the first coat. Now, when that's dry, I can use white and put a white highlight in the middle, paint the base, and we're good to go. Yeah, so now that purple's dry, it's much more matte than it was before. I think that's a good color. The green and purple with the black, I like that. Okay. Let's see. Next, let's do this guy, because I want to show you the weathering pencils. Those are cool. So this dude will use contrast, Guilliman Flesh. Uh-oh. Looks like I got a little clog to work out. Yeah, this is getting a lot more matte also. You can see the colors in there better now than when I first showed you. That's cool. Alright, Guilliman Flesh. Just pushed out the dried paint from the tip, and now we're good to go. With the skins, you kind of got to go the same as everything else, pretty heavy, and just go fast. Apparently this guy has a beard. I did not know that before. I know now. And then when you're using these, I find it best because they'll almost always have some kind of a, I don't know what it's called, this thing on the top of his head. Just touch your brush there and pull that off. Because if that's going to be the highlight, or where you would put a highlight, you don't want to make it dark just because the contrast paint wants to settle there. So his face is done. Maybe we'll do a little bit more in a second. And then I'm going to paint that belly. I don't know if that's how it was intended to be, but he's going to have his belly hanging out. Awesome. Then, so he's got a coat. I want that coat to be I don't want this guy to be all black, all blacks and grays. So his coat is going to be so much suspense. What do you think it's going to be? What color is his coat going to be? Space Wolves Gray. We'll start on the bottom, I guess. And I'm going to work in sections. Meaning I'm doing everything to his pocket. And I'm doing underneath his pocket. And then I'll do the pocket. And then I'll go up above and over to the belts. I'll go all the way to his other leg and come back. Keep moving the paints. Remember, with the contrast paints, you want to put on a lot, and you want to keep the paint moving, or at least keep your brush moving across the miniature with paint. You don't want a line to form, because this contrast paint dries pretty quickly compared to most paints. And yeah, if you take your time and you go slow, the paint will dry, and you'll get a line where the paint dried, but you weren't fast enough to move the brush across it. It's going to look crappy. Then go back through, and where my paint is starting to pool, right here, I'm just going to pull it up, clean my brush, pull that up, clean my brush, pull that up, clean the brush. I'll go in and with a black or something do some more shadows, but for right now I want a smooth application of paint across the miniature as much as possible. Get a sleeve up to the glove. Make sure I get all the way around it. Come in front. And then on the front of his jacket, he's got some kind of a, I don't know what that is. It's attached to his belt. Maybe it's like a baldric for his handgun holster or something. I don't know. I don't think it's on the other side, but that looks kind of interesting right there. We'll just go for it. So I was talking about this piece behind the axe. It's hard to see what the detail is there, whether it was part of the jacket or part of that suspension system. I don't know. So just painted it gray. part right there by his belly. Now we'll get his arm out to this glove underneath his arm. We'll get this thing, the back side. Out to the glove. On the top of his wah paint. And then working on his collar in the back. Okay, I think I got everything on his coat. I don't think I have any major slops anywhere. So that's the Space Wolves Gray. What else do I want to do? Yeah, he can have black gloves. Changing my mind. His pants are going to be Gryph-hound orange. This orange is super saturated, like crazy saturated. That is very, very orange. So he's going to be some kind of like criminal crime boss thug guy that used to work on the docks. So he's got orange pants for, whoops, reminiscent of his construction background. I think that's it for his pants, maybe a little bit right there. A little bit more right there. It's kind of tricky to see every place where it should be orange. Certain I have missed a little bit, but we go back and put on another coat. Yeah, that is very orange. It's awesome. Then his shirt that's straining to cover his belly is going to be black. Along with his boots. Here we go. Okay, cool. So it looks like his boots have some kind of strap on them. I'm going to paint that strap in a different color along with the kind of armor that he's got on his boots. And I think I'm just going to use probably Space Wolves Gray for that. So I don't know what those straps are supposed to be. He's going to get the boot details in gray. And the rest of the boot in black. I've got some miniatures from Zombicide Invaders. Zombicide Invaders. So that's a space version of Zombicide. It's awesome. You should definitely pick it up and play. Pretty sure Game Grid carries it. And there's a ton of characters in there. So everyone's like very sci-fi looking. But there's a gang of kids that escaped from an orphanage that have been battling these space invader zombies on their own. And it's been kind of fun to paint them in like kid clothes. So I'm wearing like a gray shirt with blue shorts and then black shoes. But that's kind of what this guy's like, right? He's all these kind of muted tones except for his pants. But these kids, I've decided to paint them in pinks and greens and blues and oranges and just really bright colors. And then all the sci-fi stuff, like their boots and stuff, I've painted orange and white. And that's been fun to experiment with a different color palette than I'm used to. So that needs to dry before I paint the rest of those boots because I don't want those colors to mix. So I'm going to go back to the orange. And I'm going to paint his gloves in the orange color. Oh man, he's got strappies on his gloves too. So we're going to paint those glove strappies in Space Wolves Gray. Mostly because I want things to contrast. I don't want his whole arm to be like black or just orange or whatever. I want color contrast there. Alright, that looks good. So while we're waiting, I guess we'll go to the guns. The gun and that axe. I think I've already got black here. Yeah, I've already got black here. So the gun will be black, mostly because I'm too lazy right now to paint like a Maliwan color scheme on it. But I have done that and it's cool. Or Vanguard, or whatever your favorite first-person shooter is. Alright, so the gun's done. That'll have some contrast to it when we get done. When we get finished with it drying. It's already starting to turn some grays. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Yeah, it's not completely black. It's got a lot of grays in there, which is another reason that contrast paints are awesome. Okay, so the handle of that Actually going to do brown because there's a lot of black on here already. And the axe handle is going to be not the axe handle, the axe head is going to be Nuln Oil. So you take Nuln Oil and you put it straight over something that's white. And you do it kind of heavy. Typically it's going to look like metal, or what we perceive metal to be. A lot of miniatures painting is about perception. How you perceive reality to be, and how your viewers or other people that are looking at your miniatures perceive reality. I don't want that dark spot on the bottom, so I'm going to pull it away. Or we could put another one at the top, and that might look cool. As long as they blend. Come on, blend. That's better. Yeah, that's fine. So we got the axe. The gloves will be orange. That strap that goes around it, I'm thinking it's just going to be a brown leather. I don't really want to put brown on him. Maybe we'll use wildwood again because it's really dark. And then wildwood for the haft right there. That would be fine. Oops, we need more than that. And then we're getting close to the base. So his holster is not going to be very sci-fi. It's just going to be brown. Yeah, I don't know why most miniature companies making sci-fi miniatures use leather for their web gear and their holsters and stuff. Like, come on. Make it out of Kydex or something. Even just any kind of hard plastic. Keep your genre straight and just do sci-fi. Like Space Marines have leather holsters. I think that's hilarious. Not saying it's wrong. Just saying it's super out of place when you got spaceships to have leather holsters. Just going to put the brown right over that bandolier part of his belt. And the buckle. We'll go back in a minute with silver and change it. And then I think you can see on the front of his glove, it got a little sloppy right on his knuckles. If you just clean your brush, most of the time you can pull that right away. Basically gone. Okay. So it looks like the boots are dry and the gloves are dry. So the boots we're going to use not brown, We're going to use whatever this color is called, the black. Oh, what is that color? Yeah, it's Black Templar. And we'll go over the boots with the black. Although white boots probably would have been cool too. The white with the gray actually would have looked really nice. Too late. They're black. This top part is going to be a little more tricky. Should probably switch to a smaller brush just to be a little more careful about hitting either the, yeah, I already hit the pants on top. Usually that's the only reason I'll switch to a smaller brush, is because I'm hitting another piece of the model that I don't want to paint. Just because the brush is too wide. Otherwise, I'll stick with my 6 and my 8 and my 12. And a lot of the other boots, sorry that keeps going out of focus, I need to pay better attention to where I'm at. I think I just went completely out of frame. Yeah, I just want to tease the paint around. There's a fly in here. Tease the paint around and get it exactly where I want it to be. Okay, he's got black boots. He's got a black shirt. His belly's hanging out. He's got orange pants. He's going to get orange gloves. Then we'll move on to the base. It's going to be my favorite part. Oh, so orange. I love it. I think I like this orange because it's just such a different kind of color. Like, it's really orange. Orange is not a color that most people paint regularly. In fact, I would say it's probably a color that nobody paints regularly with any kind of in any kind of volume. I don't think I've ever had a commission that's been orange. So when I get to put orange on something as an accent, it makes me happy because it's a color, I think I'm out of frame again, sorry, because it's a color that I almost never use. crap. I gotta get in there to hit his thumb on the other side with orange. Perfect example of why I'd switch to a small brush. Which I will do right now. Should be the last thing we need to paint on him. And then we'll start on, alright, I'm going to go close to me and far away from the camera. Okay, got it. You could do with some more shades, some more shadows, but I want to show you his base. And then I think I'll probably be done for the night. So after I get his nope, got to do this before I forget, otherwise I'll never come back to it. Because this miniature's been waiting for years, more than 10, to get painted. I'm going to go through the middle of this with my white. That's too much. A little more water. It's a pretty fine balancing act between the amount of paint you have on your brush and the consistency of the paint, like how watered down it is, and then how much of that you can actually get onto the miniature because of the wetness or dryness of your brush, and then how wet or dry the surface of the miniature is. It's all a little tricky, just something you have to get used to. Apparently, there's some kind of schmutz along the surface of this miniature that needs to go away. I may have been too aggressive with the Q-tip and left a hair behind. Because my beautiful paint job is getting messed up by a little piece of dust, but I think it's a piece of Q-tip that's stuck onto it. Yep, it's a Q-tip, cotton hair chunk. From when I was using the oils. Come on. Oh. That was a pain. All right. What? It's still there? Dang it, I thought I got it. Oh, come on, man. Pretty sure I got it. I don't know for sure. But I don't see it anymore. Alright. Okay. Good enough. It's focusing really well on my hand and not at all on the miniature. Okay. What was I going to show you? The base. This guy's base. Okay, check this out. This is awesome. These are weathering pencils. I think I've shown them to you before. But I don't know if I've shown you how to use them. So these are from AK Interactive. I'm going to try to match the base style on this guy. Just dirty and kind of grungy. So I need an orange. I need a red. I need a yellow. I need a gray. I need a white. I need black. Where'd you go, black? I need rubber as a cool color. And I need that's probably all. I guess we can use this dark rust. That's a lot of colors. So here's how you do it. Start with yellow. You just dip your pencil into water, and then when you move it, can you see that? It's like a watercolor pencil. A little bit more water. Right there. A little bit more water. And we'll do that. Okay. So that's the yellow. Then put it back. I'm going to get my brush, my whatever this is, number 3. I don't want any water on it, but I want water to be in the brush. And then I'm just going to tease this around so that it gets kind of into the cracks a little bit. I'm kind of just dabbing this on. And what this does is it will break up the outline of that color so that it's not just solid, it's kind of mottled. Then I'll move to my next color. Let's go with let's go with the red primer next. And then I'll darken these up as we go. So all makes sense by the time we're done. I know it looks terrible right now. It's done. So we'll get the brush again. Tap, tap, tap. Pull out some of the water. And on this, I want to try to work that red into the bottom of this, like these little crevices a little bit. I want some color in there. Okay, that's it. It's a little too colored right there, so I'll just touch it. Fine. And the next color. We'll save that. Let's go to rubber. And I'm getting a call. It has to dry for a second. Don't be concerned about any water spots that are going to form on it, because they'll look cool when it's on the base, or when everything's dried onto the base. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's real nice. So you're just drawing. You're scraping off particles of color, and the more you draw, the more you scrape off, the darker these tones are going to be. Okay, that's probably it for the rubber color. So again, with just a moist brush, I'm going to go through and touch all of these spots. Maybe kind of push it in to some spots where I want more color to be. Pull it away from spots where I want less color to be. Just teasing it around. That's good. Now we're ready for the darker colors. Like a dark rust. Okay, we'll let this dry. And it's pretty good. So dark rust. Now we're starting to get some very different variations in tone and color. So with the brush, go through, make sure that gets into the recesses where I want, but not right there. Under his boots. Want a little more of that. So Keep scraping. That's probably it. And if this washes onto his boots, I'm considering that totally fine. That it's just going to be part of the miniature, either his work environment or, I don't know, it's just part of him. He's got muddy boots. Okay. It's starting to come together. Then we'll keep going with black. Oh, that looks so dark compared to the colors we've been using. Everything's been just reds, yellows. So now that we start putting the black on, we're going to start to see the shadows really come out. And I want this to be the stage where I make sure that the detail areas on the base are differentiated from everything else. So I want to make sure that I get that strong dark tone inside everywhere. And I am just about out of time. But as you keep working the base, just adding, taking away, modulating the colors, you'll get things that are very unique and striking. And let me see if I can show you. This guy's base was done with the weathering pencils. This guy's base was done with the weathering pencils. This guy's base was done with the weathering pencils. And I think I got one more dude over here. Two more. Three more. These were also done with the weathering pencils. That one's way yellow, way orange. That's not that orange, it just looks much brighter on the camera. And this one. And this one. So keep building up the tones, he'll get there too. It's just a matter of doing it correctly. So I gotta go. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Your homework for this week is to go to Hobby Lobby and buy some oil paints and then find something to experiment with them on, because it's awesome and it's easy and it will save you guys a ton of time. Thanks. See you next week.